Greetings, EMDR friends. Kambria Evans here, the teaching and learning EMDR consultant, here today to answer a question, y'all, from somebody in Ireland. Like, how cool is it that I'm in California and I now have a friend in Ireland who is asking me questions? I love the internet. I love all of this. This is actually from a psychologist in Ireland who purchased the lesson plan course, and I just loved her question so much that I wanted to share it with all of you. One of the perks of purchasing any of Zero Disturbance's kits or courses is that it's not just a one-time experience, it's a conversation. So you get to ask me questions along the way to set you up for success about EMDR and all that goes with it. So looking forward to setting up this EMDR clinician for success. So she writes to me and says, when there is an incomplete processing and the client does not get to a 0 suds to install the PC, which is most sessions, that's absolutely right, do you seal, like with a container or a light stream, or do you close the session, like install the new learning and install the PC regardless? Beautiful question. I love this question for so many reasons. Right off the bat, I will tell you, if you're still processing, do not go to the PC, right? That's for later when learning is done with phase 4 target. So definitely don't do that. That'll come when it's the right time, when the brain is ready to kind of absorb it and take it in. In terms of containment, I love this question so much. Kind of what I'm hearing your question as is, how do I close up or wrap up a session if we're not done yet? Which, you're right, is most sessions. When I start an EMDR session with somebody, I never ever think we're going to finish this in 45 minutes, or if I'm doing an intensive, I never even let myself think, oh, we're going to finish this in 2 hours or 90 minutes, because I just never know what's going to happen. If we do finish it, it's kind of like a surprise and a bonus, but I never assume that's going to happen. So to think about your question in terms of something that's not EMDR, it might help us understand. So I don't cook, I don't bake, so I'm going to use this analogy when it's not going to be perfect, but I think it'll help us understand this together. If you think about making a cake, right, you have to have a lot of ingredients to put this thing together, right? You have to have eggs and flour and the mix and the frosting and all the equipment, right? It's kind of like for EMDR, you have to go through phases 1 and 2, you have to do a history and assessment, you have to resource, you have to figure out what the target's going to be, what are we making here, what are we doing? And sometimes we don't finish a target. It's kind of like we've got all the ingredients out, we've got all the utensils out, maybe the kitchen's a mess, maybe there's flour all over our face, maybe there's eggs on the ceiling, right? We know we can't leave it this way, but the cake's not done yet. We're still baking, we're still cooking some stuff up. So how do we kind of leave it there in a way that we can come back to it and continue, right? So again, I don't cook or bake, but just bear with me. We have to make sure we put the eggs away, right? Because we don't want to get salmonella. We'll have to make sure that we put things in the fridge. We maybe want to clean the egg off the ceiling because maybe it's dripping on our heads a little bit. Maybe we don't care if the counter is a little bit dirty. Maybe we don't care if we have to keep our apron on or off. But there are some things we want to make sure that we are cleaning up or containing until the next time we come back to finish, right? And for me, it really depends on the client, the way that we contain the session, okay? So for example, if I have a client with me who's been processing virtually for 90 minutes, which is a long time to process, I want to make sure that we are containing the client emotionally and somatically, okay? So if I've seen this person just doing a ton of work and lots of emotional discharge and connecting in their minds, I'm not going to get super cognitive with them, right? I'm not going to ask a lot of questions about, well, what did you learn? And what was it like to notice this with me? I'm going to kind of stay out of the cognitive, and I'm going to say things like, you did a great job today making lots of connections. You did a lot of time traveling. I imagine you're feeling tired. So I'm not going to use a lot of words right now. I do want to make sure that you feel contained before we end our session for now and come back to this together next time, right? So I'll ask the client, how are you feeling emotionally? And maybe they'll say, oh, I'm feeling so raw and just overwhelmed and just everything's just churning inside of me. Okay, so they're giving me emotional data update and a somatic data update. Perfect. I don't want to leave them this way for a week or 2 weeks or whenever they're coming back in a month. So I'll say to them, okay, what resource can we bring in to help you feel grounded and connected to yourself that you can take with you when you and I say goodbye today? So I'm attaching them to something, right, as we are disconnecting. I kind of think about it like when when I used to have to go away out of town. I don't go anywhere now because of COVID, but when I used to go places, I would always make sure that my kids were attached to something before I said goodbye, right? So I wouldn't just say goodbye and have them watch me at the door and be upset about that. I would attach them to their dad, or attach them to the babysitter, or attach them to an activity with somebody. So they had a place to connect. It's the same idea with resourcing. When everyone's like got these churned up feelings, what can we attach you to, right? Maybe it's their wise figure, protective figure, nurturing figure. Maybe it's their calm place. Maybe it's not that kind of imaginative resource. Maybe it's, I'm just going to hold my dog and just be with my dog for the rest of the day to help me just kind of regulate myself, right? The clients will come up with their own ideas about what's going to help them a lot of the time. So I think it's important to ask the question, right? Because we want to be client-centered and collaborative and respectful and treat them like adults, to say, what feels good to help you feel more emotionally and kind of somatically contained right now? If they can't come up with something, I will propose ideas like, what about your protective figure? Would that feel helpful? Just imagine that for a moment. Who do you want to be with you? And sometimes it's, I'm just going to go to my friend's house and sit with them. Like, they'll come up with things, right? I'm going to take a nap. And then for other clients, they don't need any of that. But I always am tracking and attuning and checking. So if I have a shorter session with somebody, and maybe let's say we did a lot of talking for 30 minutes and we only processed for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and their energy's up and they're like going through the target, but they're not like, it's not like a snow globe that's been shaken up and has to settle down, right? They're kind of more anchored and grounded in themselves. I'll still ask, what are you noticing in your body? How are you emotionally? And they'll tell me. And I'll say, do you need anything before we end today? Would you like to call in a resource to be with you? And so a lot of the times they'll say no, okay? But what I never do is I never assume I know what they need, because that's disrespectful. I never say, okay, well, we're ending and we didn't finish the target, so now let's go ahead and go to calm place or call in your light stream, right? I will remind them before we sign off to use their resources should they need to feel a different feeling state, right? Which we've talked about in phase 2. So they already know that. They already know those things are available to them. I also will say to them the snow globe analogy. I'll say this is kind of like a snow globe and things got shaken up. It takes a couple days for things to kind of settle in their new place. And it's going to look different in a couple days because your brain's going to keep processing. And I will always tell clients, make sure you put some emotional padding around you, right? Like I kind of say, like, make sure you have emotional padding. Like, don't go fight with your partner. Don't go quit your job. But just some emotional padding, knowing that things are up and they're raw and they're finding a place to settle and land. That feels okay. All right. So I hope that feels helpful. I hope that answers your question. I know it's hard when the answer is it depends on the client, but hopefully with the examples I've given, you can think of some client examples where the client might tell you they need a resource to end on, and sometimes they just don't. I always trust my clients. I always trust their brains to know what's best for them, and they know that about me. And they know they can always reach out to me if they're having a hard time and they're kind of getting stuck in something after we process. So hope that feels helpful to you. Thank you so much for your wonderful question, and I look forward to connecting next time.